Hey everyone, it's Andy here from Saving to Invest, and today I'm going to talk about the latest tips that the IRS has released on getting ready for the tax season. I'm going to break down what are the key ones and what you should be looking out for the upcoming tax season. As always, if you like the content here, I really appreciate you hit the like button and keep subscribing to get more videos like this throughout tax season. So as we approach the start of the 2022-2023 tax season, the IRS has started releasing a lot of information to help taxpayers get ready to file their returns, what to look for, and what to expect. I'll got a link here for the latest release from the newsroom. It's a lot of detail, and I'll put the link in the description as well. But what I'll go through is I've gone through this entire release, and I'm going to show you sort of the key points to be aware of and what to look out for when filing your tax returns in the upcoming tax season. I know it's been a challenging last few years with all the stimulus payment, tax credits, the delays, but hopefully you'll find this tax season is probably going to be a little smoother. You could see some of the old things arise again, but I just think there's less happening with the IRS and there's more funding for the IRS. So hopefully this year's tax season should be a little smoother, but still there's some important things to be aware of as you get ready for tax season, which means getting all your paperwork in order, making sure you know what's happening, and then filing your tax return next year as well. So the first thing, which is obvious, is you need to get all your tax records together. So, starting 2023, Jan, you'll start getting a bunch of stuff, a lot of documents coming. There's even more coming this year thanks to the new 1099K threshold being lowered, which I'll talk about in the next section. But basically, my advice, and I think what the IRS has already been saying, is keep an electronic copy. I know people like to print everything, which is fine. That's still old school, but keep it electronically because you got to keep it for several years. Normally, 3 years is what they recommend for taxpayers. But build a system. Start now. You'll improve it over the next few years if you haven't already got it. But I find that keeping a record-keeping system, I use an Excel. You can use Word master sheet to categorize what I've got, and I generally break it up according to employers, stock returns, charitable donations, funds and ETF payments, that kind of stuff. And I'll have a separate video for that. But keep a system because there's a lot of documentation that comes throughout the year, and it's if you use a tax software package or use an accountant, it's just easy if you've got it in one place so that you know what to refer to. And if you ever have an audit, you have that information as well, handy as well. I definitely recommend electronic, even though paper is reasonable if you have a simple tax return. And again, it's important that most of your documentation should start coming again from your banks, fund managers, employers, mid to late January. And generally, that's when you can actually start filing a return. The IRS will open up their tax filing from around Jan 23rd. That's my prediction for this year. It may be plus or minus a week. But by the end of Jan, when you should have your tax return, and if you have all your documentation, go ahead and file. If you file sooner, there's a chance it gets processed sooner, assuming you're not having certain credits that are restricted under the PATH Act, which I'll touch on later. But generally, if you can file sooner. But I would also say don't file until you have everything. There's no point misfiling and then having to doing an amended return. So wait till you have everything. Generally, end of Jan, early Feb is a good time for those who can file early. Otherwise, wait till you have all your documentation. The other thing you should do at the end of tax year, or even during the tax year, especially as we approach the end of this tax season for 2022, is use the tax withholding estimator on the IRS website. It can basically help people who have wage earners, W-2 earners, determine if there's a need to adjust their withholding and for additional tax payments or submit a new W-4 form to the employer to avoid an unexpected tax bill. So basically, if you have a life-changing situation, you get married, divorced, your tax situation can change. So what the withholding estimator is how much of your taxes are being withheld while you're getting paid. So basically means you don't underpay and then potentially face penalties and fines when you go file your return the following year. But I'd also say don't withhold too much. I always say pay what you owe, not more. Maybe you want to err on being more conservative and hold some back, but you're giving a free loan to the IRS. So use your withholding estimator. If you have a life event, if something changes, if you're getting more money, or if you have a side hustle, update and check your payment regularly so you're withholding the right amount. Now you can wait till year end and just make a large lump sum payment. You have to make estimated taxes, of course, throughout the year, but you can always adjust this anytime, and then your employer can adjust the final two paychecks to make sure that enough tax is withheld so you don't face a penalty. So it's always good to do this, and the IRS has a nice tool. Just go to the irs.gov site, tax withholding estimator, and you can actually run that for your personal situation. Here, we're going to see a lot more people getting 1099K forms from various payment processes like Venmo, PayPal. And basically, this was done as part of the ARPA 2021 Act so that folks getting money from side jobs, gigs workers, basically freelancers, and trying to deal with the gig economy. There initially was a requirement that if they earn more than 20,000, that they need to get a 1099K form from the third-party payment network, like the PayPal, the Venmos. That was actually lowered to $600 under the ARPA 2021 bill. So, which means that a lot more people are going to getting a 1099K. Now, these people should have reported all their earnings in respect of this form, but clearly that didn't happen. So that's why the threshold was reduced from 20,000 to 600, and that was actually part of the funding for the American Rescue Plan Act. So a lot more people will be getting this. The one challenge is that a lot of people use Venmo to pay friends or relatives for gifts and reimbursements. While those are not taxable, there's a chance that a lot of these third-party networks will still send you a 1099K. So it's going to be very important that you deal directly with that network to withdraw that 1099K, because otherwise the IRS is going to look at it as revenue and potentially make it taxable. And again, the IRS will not be able to correct these forms. They come from the payment provider, so you'll have to contact Venmo, whatever third-party network you use, sometimes even Apple Pay. But it's going to, I can predict this year, it's going to cause a lot of issues, a lot of questions. But just remember, the 1099K form is just going to be sent to more people. It doesn't necessarily mean people suddenly have made more money, just that the reporting is going to be higher so that those who tried to hide it will now be having to be exposed a little bit more. And if you are using Venmo like I do for paying friends and relatives, just make sure that you don't get a 1099K for those transactions. And I would almost say, if you're using it for business and personal, create two Venmo, two PayPal accounts. Just separate like you should do for your banking. Have a business account and then have your own personal account so that you can avoid having a 1099K sent to you for personal transactions, which could end up becoming taxable if the IRS reconciles what you submitted versus what they got from the vendor. So while it shouldn't be a shock to most people, refunds will be smaller in 2023. So the average refund payment was around $2,800 in 2022. It'll probably drop to somewhere around $2,500 in 2022. Again, this is mainly because there were really no huge tax credits or stimulus checks, aka economic impact payments, done in 2022. And also folks won't be able to take the charitable contributions if they just take the standard deduction. And most people take the standard deduction. So based on these factors, based on this basically no free money handed out by the government in 2022, refunds will be smaller, especially some of those advanced child tax credits and those expanded earned income tax credits, which were refundable credits, which means they got paid even if you didn't owe taxes, will generally mean that refunds will be smaller in 2023. So that's unfortunate, but something you should expect to happen as well. Ideally, if you've withheld all your taxes correctly, you should almost have no refund. But for those who are expecting a larger refund from the IRS, this year should be definitely less. And of course, I think the IRS is making a note because they've been burned. If you're waiting for a refund to make any big purchases or you're relying it to make certain bills, don't, because refund payments could run late, especially if your return has additional reviews required for fraud or for other security checks, or you've had issues or your previous year returns are still being processed. They will definitely take longer. So don't bank on it to be done within the 21 days of the IRS says is normally when refunds are processed. Also remember, if you claim the earned income tax credit or the additional child tax credit, these cannot be issued before mid-February due to the PATH Act. And I have a whole article which I'll post in the description below, but that's just an IRS sort of mandated. They can't do anything about it. So even if you filed by the end of Jan, you may have to wait till the end of Feb, early March to generally see these returns that claim the EITC or the additional child tax credit. So just be aware of that. Smaller refunds and delays will likely persist this year. Again, I don't think they'll be as bad as 2021 or 2022, but I do think you will probably see some delays, especially for those more complicated tax returns. So the other good thing that was in the news release, which I think was helpful for those who are still waiting for their tax return, is that the IRS provided some statistics on where they are with those delayed tax returns. This includes this current year and the previous years that folks are still waiting for. So as of November 11th, the IRS had 3.7 million unprocessed returns received this year. So this includes 2021 and prior years that people filed this year to obviously claim credits or refunds because of those extra stimulus credits and child tax credits that people could get thanks to the pandemic packages. So those 3.7 million returns are still unprocessed. So that's a pretty large backlog given there's about 130 million tax returns. It's not large when you look at the overall, but it's still a lot of people affected by that. And then for some previous year tax returns, 1.7 million require error correction or special handling because there was something found with them that the IRS could not reconcile and is going to be sending notices or has, or is going back and forth with the taxpayer. Also, there's 2 million paper tax returns. So the total 3.7 million number, 1.7 are due to errors or special handling. And then 2 million are paper returns, and those have to be manually done by an IRS agent. So those take a lot longer, which is why you should always file electronically. Even the IRS says that for the last few years. And then you also have 900,000 unprocessed Form 1040X amended returns. So those are folks that filed a correction or an amended return. So a lot of returns, over almost close to 5 million returns are still in some state of processing or unprocessed. So, the IRS is trying its best. It's taking more than 20 weeks for amended returns because it's much more manual, much more reconciliation. But you can keep checking where's my amended return or where's my return for regular returns. I've also posted a bunch of videos on how you can check your IRS tax transcript for seeing where your amended return is or your regular return. But the short story is that the processing backlogs are acute for paper returns and amended returns, and it'll probably just take time for the IRS to get through the backlog. Even if they're doing hundreds of thousands a week, they also know that in the next few weeks they'll have to start getting ready for the 2023 tax season, and so everything will just slow down further. So have patience, keep staying persistent, and I'll post more updates as they come through on where the IRS is on some of their backlogs. So the final part of the news release, and I think was a really important section, was a bunch of helpful links and tools on the irs.gov website. I've posted a link here, and I'll post more information in the description below this video. But definitely, I think this is a great place to go and find help during and after tax season. There's a whole Let Us Help You page, which I'll cover in a future video a little bit more. You definitely should have an IRS online account. It's free. You can check your transcript. You can update a bunch of stuff. You can make tax payments, estimated tax payments, and overdue tax payments. So it's actually quite a useful place, and everyone should be having an IRS online account if you don't have one already. There's also the access to IRS free files. So if you earn below, I think it's $73,000 this year, you can generally file your tax return for free via the IRS free file program, which is useful. And also it's supported by several of the commercial tax packages as well. If you're looking for a tax professional, you can check the link for choosing a tax professional, which will help you figure out who's qualified and endorsed by the IRS. Definitely recommend you do that. And then ultimately, you can also have Where's My Refund tool if you're trying to find the status of your regular filed tax return. There's also a Where Is My Amended Refund tool for those who filed amended returns as separate tools. So you have that, and then I would definitely also say go to your IRS account and check your transcript for updated information. And then there's obviously a place you can get volunteer income tax assistance for also the elderly as well. So that's the tax counseling for the elderly, the TCE program. So between those two, they can help folks that need help with basic tax return preparations. And finally, I think I've said this before, I'll reiterate, file your return electronically and use direct deposit. That is the fastest, safest way to get a refund. The electronic filing means there's automatic checks built in, so in validation, and direct deposit means it's sent straight to your bank account, no checks lost in the mail. So definitely do that. And you can obviously open a bank account if you're filing your tax return for the first time or you haven't had it before. So hopefully a bunch of stuff covered in this video. I know there's a lot there. I've posted links to this newsletter. Have a look at it as well in detail. I'll be posting a bunch more tax-related videos. And if you got this far, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks.